Welcome to Season 5, Episode 33 of the Be Conscious podcast. Today, I am joined by Michael Thornhill, the founder of Casa Galactica, who joins us from Pisca, Peru. I am so curious to have Michael tell us how we can release the pain of the past and what he is doing to change the world for the better. Here we go.
Welcome to the Be Conscious podcast, the show that brings you enlightened perspectives on the frequency of money, life's many challenges, and those heavy feelings that may be holding you back from living your best life. And now your host, Dr. Susan Nicholas.
Michael Thornhill is the co-founder of Casa Galactica in Peru. He is a traditionally trained plant spirit healer, professional channel, and advocate of trauma-informed care. Recovering from addiction, trauma, and abuse have been a big part of Michael's own healing journey. He now dedicates his life to helping others help themselves. Michael, welcome to the Be Conscious podcast.
Susan, thank you so much for having me. An absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for joining me. You have a very interesting story and a very interesting, I would say, um, awakening, like into the conscious realms of life or the metaphysical realms of life. And I would love it if you could share with us your journey from addiction into what you're doing now.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for asking. The first thing I would just say is what I'm about to share does not make me special in any way, other than the fact that I have just been dedicated to healing myself and searching for the truth inside. Everything that I've done is possible for everyone, and it's absolutely not necessary for you to do things in the same way as me. I share my story here in the hope of inspiration that you may find your own truth in whatever way that looks like. And from coming over any level of adversity, trauma, or abuse, just know that it is possible to heal and have a loving, heart centered life that's in alignment. So, as Susan, you
Mhm.
have beautifully introduced, I'm co founder of Casa Galactica here in Peru with my wife, Jamie Thornhill. And we run our Healing and Evolution Center where we work with ayahuasca retreats, channeling sessions, intuitive readings, trauma healing sessions, and really this whole life that's in complete alignment with our soul's purpose. So, the reason why I'm sharing that in alignment with the question is it's probably best to start with something a little bit more positive before I go deep down into the dark. So we know we're going to end up. So you
Mhm.
can hang in there for the story as it moves. So I was not always happy. I was always not living in a life in alignment with my true purpose, and I was suffering heavily from addiction and repressed trauma, unacknowledged trauma, and abuse. So I started drinking and smoking marijuana from around about 11 or 12 years old. My mother was unfortunately very ill all of her life until she passed away about 6 years ago. My parents divorced when I was about 8 years old. I was living at my grandparents, and my grandparents actually very much looked after me and my brother and gave us a very good opportunity in life and helped us to move through some of the difficulties. Yet the instability and what I'll talk about later of the repressed, unacknowledged trauma had a very deep impact upon my being. I can remember from a very, very young age, even as young as perhaps 10 years old, not really feeling like I wanted to live. And I was very unsure about
Mm.
why that was the case. And I just kind of thought I was upset about my mother and my father divorcing. But it turned out that I was very much involved with different levels of sexual, violent, ritual abuse as a child, which caused me to, I would say, have fragments or splinterings of personalities, of different aspects of myself being repressed, and it took me into some very dark places. And I left home when I was 16. Luckily, I got a scholarship to play rugby at a college, which was my ticket out from the upbringing that I was having and the experience of being in trouble with different gangs and all sorts of things that was very unsafe for me as a child. And I moved away at 16 years old and started to fend for myself in many different ways. And that was really when I really started to experiment with other drugs, more and more alcohol, with no one watching me, no one to be accountable to. And I went off to university to study chemistry, medicinal chemistry in Manchester University in the UK, and continued partying. I got into DJing, music production, the nightlife scene, partying for days on end, and continuing in this down spiral to keep the anxiety, the depression, what I now know to be PTSD, at bay. And to fast forward the story, after I graduated and continued partying and doing music stuff, I was working in recruitment. I got a job in recruitment, headhunting, finding people to work on energy projects, and I became very good at that and started making some good money, which also then meant that I could go deeper into the addictions because then money was less of a limiting factor on how high I could get. And this continued being very successful. I would say I was a functioning addict, very, very successful, doing very well. People wouldn't necessarily know that if they met me, although it was quite a down spiral time in my life. And then after my mother passed away about 6 years ago, it caused me to see and look death in the face in a different way. And this feeling that I thought I'd never make it to 30 years old, I didn't really have that much passion or zest for life. Seeing my mother pass away, on some level brought a great, well, on many levels brought a great deal of sadness and trauma. And then on the other side of things, there was also a relief that I wasn't necessarily needing to be such a care provider for her and see her go through these many, many different stages of almost dying, recovering, almost dying, recovering. And that was having a toll on my mental and emotional wellness. But through that process of her dying, it caused me to look my life a little bit more in the face and see that I didn't really want to die. I didn't want to throw my life away. I wanted to make my life mean something in some way or another. And I knew that I would have to
Mhm.
face healing these addictions. And it was getting to the point where the addictions were getting stronger and stronger. It was getting more and more out of control. And the highs were lower and the downs were
The lows
exactly
were
yes.
lower. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just going downwards. So I got into meditation. Yeah,
Mm.
please go
Can I
ahead.
ask can I ask you a couple of questions before we, talk about the
Yes.
transition? Okay. And so can you take us back to that 10-year-old Michael who you said felt like you wanted to die as a child, and you thought that it was related to the divorce of your parents when you were 8 years old, but you realized or it you now know it was something else. What was it at that time that triggered that repressed memory, or how did you come into awareness what the root of that sadness and depression was as a child?
It honestly, it wasn't until my late 20s when I started working with ayahuasca and other plant medicines that I was able to see and put the pieces of the puzzle together about why I was feeling that way. And that was related to sexual abuse
Mm,
as a child that I wasn't aware of. So for me as a 10-year-old child,
mm,
it was just very much a feeling of depression, of not really feeling loved, feeling very lost, and not wanting to live. And there was one point when I was, I think, 10 years old where I took uh, 12 or however many the maximum paracetamol tablets, or I think they're called Tylenol in the States. So I took 8 of those in
mhm,
one go, and yeah, nothing happened to
mhm,
me, thankfully. But I just felt numb.
mhm,
I think
mhm,
felt numb from the pain.
mm. Can I ask, I don't know how comfortable you are sharing with this, but when you when you experienced the ayahuasca and it helped you to see that time in your life, was it was the memory repressed because you were so young that you couldn't remember, or so horrific that you couldn't you didn't you wouldn't allow yourself to remember, or a
Yeah.
combination?
A few different things. Well, firstly, my healing and awakening journey has been in stages. So the memories of trauma, of repressed trauma, have not all come back in one stage, because that would have been too much, too
Mhm.
overwhelming to integrate. And this has been
Mhm.
something I've been working on over the past 6 years or so. And thankfully now feel like I've actually moved through most of it, and in a very stable point and place in my life to be able to help others. So when this was
Mhm.
arising, my understanding of this, and this is my understanding of trauma, is there's a level of dissociation that occurs. A level of dissociation that occurs when someone is experiencing violent abuse or sexual abuse. The consciousness can dissociate from the body, so that the child doesn't have to fully experience the tragedy
Yes.
of what may be happening. And that's actually a survival mechanism and instinct,
Mhm.
so that the consciousness of the child can live semi normally within day
Mhm.
to day life, without having this horrific incident or incidences at the forefront of consciousness. Which is where the healing work comes in, is when we can revisit
Mhm.
that later in life with the right support tools and care, to be able to heal that, so that doesn't become somatically stored within the being, in
And
the cells, in the memory, and these types of things. The other thing is, with regards to that, is that when I was raped, that I was drugged a lot, so that I was actually unconscious. So there's a physical actual unconsciousness of that, which would cause me not to remember those things. So then going through that with plant medicines to be able to access these repressed traumas and memories, is then created great liberation for me to be able to heal those, so that those unconscious wounds no longer need to be a part of my day to day experience.
mm. So can I ask you something? You talk about these unconscious wounds and this kind of survival mechanism of the body. Okay, my thoughts around this are um, that what we call a repressed memory is actually energetic, has an energetic form to it, or at its very, very core, I think we are energetic beings, and our feelings, they carry a vibrational resonance, our language, and all of it's all a vibration, it's all energy at its very core. And when we have something that is within us, like we can feel it, and we have a name for it. We call it depression, or we call it sadness, or we call it suicidal ideation. That those are, at the core of them, energies that are stored in the energetic matrix of us. Some will call it the soul or the spirit. And it's its way of communicating with us that those energies must be transformed. And so when I think about the energy of all of it, it takes me back to the very first law of thermodynamics, which is the law of conservation of energy. That energy is not created nor destroyed, but it only changes state, that essentially energy is transformed. And so all of those feelings, those heavy, some people call them shadow energies or feelings, those are energies that's a part of us. Like it is us, it's a part of us. And when that ping or that vibration, it's like that nudge is so strong that it cannot be avoided any longer. It cannot be repressed any longer. It rises up in us, I believe, to be ultimately transformed. It requires of us as kind of physical beings is to reach a level of consciousness, or I would even say emotional maturity, to be able to allow the transformation of that energy, knowing that it will not break us. We are strong
Mhm.
enough to not go around it, not numb it, not medicate it, not forget about it, not stuff it down, but we are strong enough to go through it. Like the only way to the other side of that is through it. And in the I would say the act of going through it, the emotional going through it, that energy has the potential to finally be transformed. And when I talk about like the transformation of energy, it's not from like hate to love. Like it's not a huge big swing in a polar opposite direction, but it could be a transformation of to acceptance or forgiveness or peace, um, or even courage from, some very, very lower, denser energies. Um, so I wonder what your thoughts are about this process of transformation
Yeah, I think that was really,
on the
really
of the
beautifully
soul.
said, Susan. I like how you brought in the law of thermodynamics, especially with my own chemistry background as well. So I think that's a beautiful way to
Mhm.
put that. And I think what's interesting to add to what you so eloquently put is that we can then start looking at this and from multi-dimensional lifetimes or multiple lifetimes of
Mhm.
incarnation. And again, this is looking at the idea of incarnation, which is in my experience the truth of what exists. But I'll just put that there. If you don't believe this is not a problem, just leave it to the wayside. But I just invite you to ponder this, that we have different energies which exist in different lifetime experiences and different incarnations, which also
Mhm.
which also through the concept which you've described, Susan, also wanting to be transformed, also wanting to be acknowledged, to be accepted, to be loved. And when we
Mhm.
incarnate into these
Mhm.
lifetimes, into our current lifetime, we have that energetic imprint, which you've described as in the soul imprint, which is then
Mhm.
also being carried through into this lifetime. So, through the healing of our wounds in
Mhm.
this lifetime, which I've described in my own experience, my personal experience of healing the trauma and abuse as a child, this I am consciously aware of is also related to other lifetimes, and that as I'm doing this healing work, that
Mhm.
I am also healing and accepting other energies and aspects and trauma imprints which are then being healed simultaneous in other simultaneous lifetimes. So
Exactly. Like the ancestor, like it's like this thread. There's this vibrational energetic thread that is you and me and everybody else. And that when we stand in it, in this embodiment, during this embodiment to transform that energy, that we transform backwards and forwards, like
yeah,
all at
and I think
once.
I just like my wife Jamie and I, we also when we're talking, we often when we're processing different things, we say to each other, "This is the lifetime where we're really doing it. We're really healing it. We're really doing it this time."
I do the same thing. I've declared it. Like once I woke up consciously, I was like, "This is my last life. I'm doing it. I'm doing all of the work. I'm like nothing's gonna be left behind in this life. I'm transcending this life from a place, the vibration of love, of acceptance
And I
of its
think I think
all."
the interesting thing to everyone listening here is if you're kind of resonating with Susan and I's idea of doing it in this lifetime, look at all the resources, the connectivity, the opportunity that we have right
Mhm.
here and now to begin to shift. In other lifetimes and
Mhm.
other experiences, even just 50 years ago or even less, or even just 20 years ago, people were not talking about trauma. People were not talking about consciousness in the way they are. There were not all these available opportunities to be able to transform and transcend. So it's like really to like look around in life and say,
Mhm.
wow, what an opportunity I have to really heal, to really evolve, to really open my consciousness and awareness and transcend these countless lifetimes where I've suffered in separation. I think what an exciting opportunity for everyone.
I agree. I think we are in a time and space in this third dimensional on this third dimensional planet that we all share, that energies are rising up to be transformed, not just as in us as individuals, but from a
Mhm.
societal standpoint. We're seeing a lot of old paradigm shift and a lot of old antiquated belief systems, which again, at the core, I believe, of everything in noble existence is energy, that our beliefs at their very core carry a vibrational resonance, that they are now it's like um it's like a under pressure, like I just think of like a pimple. Like it's under so much pressure, and then it lets out, right? It wants to rise up and let out and express, what all the gunk that's in there. And I think that's what's happening for us as individuals. Like, it's like, how many incarnations are we going to carry this stuff? And you see these awakenings occurring, for people to be able to transform energy. Because with this awakening, as you know, comes your superpowers, like this
Mhm.
ability. One of my superpowers was the ability to see and transform energy, like to move energy. And so I wasn't awakened to that before, but now that those latent abilities have been awakened in me, not only can I transform for myself, I've got to do all the work, as well. I can then do it for others. And so I think it is a very special time on the planet for the transformation of all of it, of all things. Um, I did want to ask you another question about what you what you spoke about, this idea of these past incarnations and this carryover of energies of belief systems that are in the core of our essence, like, that are imprinted, as you said, on our soul. um hmm. So I'm asking this question because I've asked it of myself. And when we experience abuse in our corporal forms in this lifetime, has it been your experience, Michael, that if we can look back on our prior existence, that there's a very high probability that we were once the
Mhm.
abuser? I mean, not I'm not going just back to karma, but the idea is that it can only exist in me if it is me. Like, there's something about me that the reason I'm having this experience is to transmute something from a past existence where maybe the tables were
Mhm.
turned and I was in a position of the abuser, and then this carnation I get to feel that other side of it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and great way of putting it. To really take that to a deeper level of understanding, we can recognize that there's one infinite creator. So if there's one infinite creation, one infinite creator that has experienced all things, so as we see ourselves here
Mhm.
today, Susan, we see ourselves as individuated beings. But when we go back beyond that, back beyond the idea of incarnation,
Mhm.
even before the Big Bang, before the universe, there's one infinite creator.
Mhm.
So within that one infinite creation, which is you and I, which is all of the listeners, all simultaneously, all of those
Mhm.
experiences are concurrent. All those experiences are available to us. All those experiences which we
Mhm.
see, oh, someone else is having this experience. We also have access to this experience, and this experience is available. Hence, on some level, we've
Mm.
experienced it. Now, in the idea of
Mm.
incarnation, I would say, again, it's more likely than not likely that everyone has experienced themselves in lifetimes that they're perhaps from their more awakened self now. They may say, that wasn't maybe the best choice, or I didn't do the best thing. Or with my awareness
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
I can understand, this, that, and the other. For me personally, I've had many lifetimes conscious awarenesses of being in war, in different situations, and the
Mm.
terrors of that. And that's been a big part of the imprint of healing in
Mhm.
my own life. But yes, in many cases, when people have been the perpetrator in whatever way or capacity that is. Now, from the
Mhm.
non-dual perspective, going back to the oneness, this is not to create more shame and guilt, because if we look at the kind of Christian or religious viewpoint, which looks at good, evil, sin, and these types of things, which again,
Mhm.
zero wrong with religion or spirituality in these senses, and that's a great path for everyone in whatever way fits. The idea here is to just take it to that next level of understanding, in my experience, looking beyond good and bad, of, oh, this is my good life, as we kind of joked about before, and then the other one is our bad life. We're healing our bad life with this good
Mhm.
life. We can look at the invitation is just to see
Mm.
that as one stream of consciousness that is just a contrasting experience to what we're having right now. Because would we have this experience of forgiveness, of awakening, of striving for oneness again, unless we'd had those deep experiences of separation? Would it still be the same desire to transform and transcend unless we'd experienced those deep levels of suffering? So it's just a contrasting
Mhm,
experience.
mhm,
The human mind will want to categorize as
mhm,
right,
mhm,
wrong, good, and evil. And again, relatively, those things
mhm,
experience are on planet Earth. But the invitation is to look at that from the infinite non-dual perspective of varying different levels of experience, which is allow us to transform, to evolve. And the important thing here, in my experience, is choose who we want to be, choose our
mhm,
vibration, choose our
mhm.
frequency. And we've had so many of those frequency vibration lives that are not in alignment, that we didn't know any better, that we were forced into situations, in many situations and cases, or just completely unaware, or even having service to self lifetimes where we were just focused on ourselves. But the invitation now is, who do you want to be? Who do you want to show up at? How do you want to experience yourself? And the opportunity is here now for us to choose that alignment. And that's really what the work that we offer is helping people find the truth of who they are.
Mm. You talk about separation, and uh, I often speak about the illusion of separation. Like we feel like I am this individual person and you are this individual person, and it's coincidence that we have met in this lifetime, whatever the nature of that meeting, or how brief or how long, and that we live, separate lives. But in fact, on an energetic level, certainly on a conscious level, on a unity conscious level, we are all one. And you are a reflection of me, and I am a reflection of you. Like, and if we can see one another, then we can experience, or I would say almost have a soul memory of that aspect of the consciousness. And that it's, when things bother us or rub us the wrong way or trigger us, it's because it's within us. Like, you cannot push a button that is does
Mm,
not exist, right? So no one can make you feel, do anything. That is within you already. And sometimes we don't like that, right? We don't like those things being shown to us, like the capacity, the vast capacity of our being, because we've made a judgment about it. We've been conditioned and programmed, like you said, to judge good, bad, right, wrong, up, down, evil, not evil, whatever. But I wonder, Michael, if you can agree with this, that everything that occurs is neutral. It's like, it just is. And then we, as beings and third dimensional beings, we judge it. Like, we charge the events with our own judgments and our own programming. And so we say something's right or wrong or good or bad, um, because we've been conditioned, to do so. Now, let me qualify this statement, of saying that it's all neutral, and the only meaning that anything at all has is the meaning that we assign to it, the meaning that we give to it. It doesn't mean that everything that occurs feels good, or in this sense, in this language, is aligned with us. Like, it doesn't feel right, for me, or something that perhaps I want to do again. Maybe I did it in a past life and I know what that feels like. And I'm like, no, 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 not this time. I'm not going to do it this time. And so we have feelings about it, but it's neutral. Like, inherently, the meaning of it is the meaning that I give to it, or perhaps the meaning that society gives to it. And so there's so many things that um, we don't understand can occur, like child abuse. Like, there's nobody that likes that. You know what I mean? Like, no one's like, "Oh, yeah, 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 that's good, that's good," No one has a good feeling about that. And so, but it exists within us as a collective. That energy of that is. And I think it's up to each of us to, even though we are connected as a consciousness, we are individuated into beings. Um, and each of us has a responsibility, I believe, at what we are creating. That we are creators. And once we recognize that and we own that, then we must become responsible for what we are creating or what we are putting out in the world.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more with regards to the neutrality of things and the amount of turmoil that we give ourselves and each other through applying meaning to things that have no inherent meaning to perpetuate, to reinforce the stories that are continuing to play out in our life. You can look at any completely neutral
Mhm.
situation. I could look out the window now and I could see someone walking past my house, and then I could just say, see, that's the reason that my day is going to be bad. Just like, I mean, that just because this person walked
Yeah,
past and
yeah.
looked at me, I could then say that look was a sign from God that it's going to be a bad day. And we do all these
Mhm,
different types of things. We
mhm.
receive a phone call. We send someone a message and they don't respond. And then we add all the meaning. We see the three
Mhm.
dots and they don't respond. And, oh, wow,
Right.
what is this person doing? You know? Just like then this whole story plays out in our head. We create our own reality and then we feel bad. But we do
Yeah.
this on everything. We do this on everything and everything, everything,
Yes,
everything. So
yes,
the more that we
yes.
can apply less meaning to things, it doesn't mean that your life's meaningless. It's different. I think that's very different. But
Mhm,
just
mhm,
applying
mhm,
nonsense meaning to things to give ourselves this feeling of feeling unconditionally loved or giving ourselves validation, and then
mm,
also the self-flagellation that we give
mhm,
when we apply meaning to neutral events that then cause us to say, see, this is the reason
mhm,
why I'm a bad person. I don't deserve to be financially abundant. I don't deserve to have a loving partner. See, these are the
mhm,
reasons why. So we can just automatically, just catalytically shortcut ourselves to the truth of who we are by recognizing every point in every day
mm,
where we apply meaning to things that are completely inherently meaningless. And you will find, if you look hard enough,
mm,
that it's very difficult to have an objective meaning to anything. So that could just crumble your whole life
mm.
right there if you just stop, just like, okay,
Right. It's all very
yeah,
subjective.
everything's
Yes.
subjective.
It's based on our own
Mhm. And
experiences.
again,
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
exactly.
But for those of you who are out there listening who are
Mhm,
just wanting to take that next step, is just the invitation. It's a very powerful practice, even if you're just doing 5 minutes a day or 5, 10 minutes a day, just recognizing I'm going to apply no meaning to anything. And just look at the different way that you will
mm,
interact with your reality, with your clients, with your customers, with your family, your friends, and your relationships. If where you would apply a meaning, get upset or excited, again, positive or negative, just not one way or the other,
mhm,
just then see how you react when you prevent the human condition of applying meaning to every experience. And then just you'll start to get
mhm,
a little bit closer to that objective reality. You'll start to get a little bit closer to
mm,
that. And that can inform you greatly because you stop chasing your tail, running round after meaningless meaning that you've applied to things, hoping that that meaningless meaning will give you some sense of meaning in your own life.
mm. Interesting. Yeah, I call that being
Mhm.
the observer. And being in a position to be the observer, think takes quite a bit of introspection. I call it the process of introspection and the transmutation of many, many antiquated belief
Mhm.
systems, patterns, conditions, and cycles. Well, Michael, I'm going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to discuss your ayahuasca center and maybe if you want to share an experience that you had. I've never experienced it, and I've heard about it, but maybe you can bring that to life for us and share what you do at your center and what perhaps the ayahuasca experience, how it helped you to transform your past.
Absolutely. Thank you. I
Stay
look forward to it.
Okay, stay with me.
Like what you're hearing so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. How would you describe your relationship with money? Did you ever imagine that your deepest feelings and beliefs about money could be preventing you from acquiring all the wealth that you desire? Click the link below in the show notes to learn more about Dr. Nicholas's highly sought-after Frequency of Money program to positively transform your relationship with money. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
So before the break, we began to speak about the ayahuasca experience. For those of us that haven't had the experience, can you share with us perhaps a little bit of your personal experience, if you're open to that, and what we could expect from Casa Galactica?
Absolutely. Firstly, Susan, I just want to say thank you for a riveting conversation. It's been very enjoyable to dive deep into some topics, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing. So we'll shift into some ayahuasca experiences. So you can already maybe get some of the idea of what ayahuasca has been helping me with when I've talked about this life of suicidal ideation, PTSD, anxiety, depression, addiction, drugs. And now, fast forward 6 years later from my last kind of experiences in the Western world, and being happily married, running a healing and evolution center with my wife, running our heart soul business, having beautiful animals, and
Mm-hmm.
living a very heart centered, fulfilling life. Doesn't mean it's without challenges. Just in case anyone out there who says that they're a spiritual
Mm-hmm.
teacher and has no challenges, I just want to debunk that straight away. Doesn't mean that you don't have challenges in your own life. So definitely have enough of
Yeah.
those.
Mm-hmm.
But ayahuasca has been very, very transformational for me in helping me shift from those levels of addiction primarily. So, the way this wants to come
Mm-hmm.
through today, I'm going to kind of go through a few different experiences at different time events and then bringing me up to the present day. And I think that'll probably happen in about 3 or 4 minutes or so. So, firstly, I went to my first ayahuasca retreat when I was living in Berlin. It was a small retreat in a way that we don't work now, but nonetheless, it was very beneficial. And after drinking ayahuasca for that first weekend, despite having tried many, many different ways and to try and stop addiction, to try and heal from addiction, I'd never been successful. Ayahuasca, I went into ayahuasca at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
because someone told me that it would be very beneficial to heal from addiction. In that first weekend retreat, after drinking ayahuasca 3 times, I stopped smoking, stopped drinking,
Mm.
stopped doing drugs, and I've not gone back. I smoked maybe marijuana a couple of times afterwards when I was in India, but yet that I'm talking about someone who was drinking every day, smoking weed every day, doing hard drugs all weekend. That stopped and that changed in a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
That changed in a
Mm.
weekend, and I'd done therapy, I'd done meditation, I'd done various different therapists in very different ways, and nothing had changed, but it changed in that weekend for me. Now, that doesn't mean that there were
And why do you think
yeah,
that was? Like, what was it about ayahuasca that you believed had the power to do that within you?
absolutely beautiful question. So, firstly, I was not spiritual, religious in any shape, way, or form, but I had a very deeply spiritual
Mhm.
experience where I was connecting to the spirit of my mother who'd passed, connecting to different guides and beings, and and having an experience that was not rational, was not logical, was not able to be explained, but a part of me knew that it was true. Secondly, I understood that at the core wound of my addictions that I was experiencing was a lack of unconditional love, and that I didn't know what unconditional love was. And I felt and experienced it in the ayahuasca ceremony and could see that I was synthetically chasing that
Mm.
experience of unconditional love that I didn't get, which I deserved as a child, that from very quickly after birth was not available to me. So I recognized it was unconditional love that the drugs
Mm.
were they were trying to fill the hole of. And then
Mhm.
thirdly, I then saw the life that I was living where I kind of got into this job after doing my chemistry degree that I just carried on doing because I was enjoying the money and thinking this was a good way to have a good career. And all of the lies, the society, the institution, the
Mhm.
capitalism, all the other stuff that was kind of distorted in my looking for the success in this rat race, I could see that my life was highly, highly out of alignment, working 80 hours a week, drinking a lot, doing all these drugs, trying to find this sense of happiness, but my life was completely out of alignment. So then I recognized and realized those things of
Mhm.
there's a higher power available to me that I don't know what it is, but I've directly experienced it. I understand that unconditional love is at the core of all the wounds, the absence of that unconditional love. And then my life, based upon the not feeling that unconditional love, is trying to recreate this through financial success, validation, and not doing the things that I truly want
Mhm.
to and deserve to do because I have so much financial fear, as many of us do, as we're making this transition. And they're doing all these things to try and feel safe and secure, when really it's the trauma underneath that I feel afraid and scared from the abuse, which I came into awareness of later. But then the combination of those things would not be available to me in a meditation session. It would not be available to me in a therapy session because it was absolutely transcendental, visceral body experience, and knowing that once I'd saw that, it's kind of like when you know Santa Claus is not real, you're like, sorry if anyone is listening who still thinks Santa Claus is
Mm.
real, I should have put a spoiler alert. But if Santa Claus is not real, when you know that, it's Christmas is not the same. As a child, it's like it's changed. You
Mhm.
can't
Mhm. Mhm.
unsee that. And you could try and go back and be like, oh, I'm just going to
Mhm.
pretend that this is the real life. And I knew I couldn't. I knew it couldn't.
Mhm.
And it was what I asked for. And then what really happened once I had these experiences, and very, very, I could go on for hours about this experience, but meeting different guides, beings, one consciousness, experiencing all of this, and the aforementioned kind of realizations came from that. I recognized and realized that to anchor in that healing, I would have to change my life. I'd have to let go of the drugs, and I already saw that if I was following the addictions, that I was taking a step away from my true path of why I was here, and the life that I was here to experience of stepping into a healing role, which I didn't even really know what it meant at the time. So they didn't believe any of this, but I
Mhm.
glimpsed it, and my soul recognized it and was activated and knew it, and I knew that I had a choice. I had a choice. Do I follow this intuition? Do I follow the steps of what I felt to be true, or do I go back to the fear and just go back into this life? But I didn't. I took steps forward, and I'll just pause there because I feel like you might have a question or something before I jump onto something else.
Yes. You talked about unconditional love and that being what was driving the bus, as far as
Mhm.
the addiction of believing that you didn't have it or didn't feel it. And I wonder if when you had the ayahuasca ceremony, do you think it was simply the acknowledgement that that was what was driving the bus, like the awareness, like, oh, I've been searching for this unconditional love? Or do you think, Michael, that you realize that you are unconditionally
Yeah,
loved?
it's a great question. It's twofold. So at the level of understanding of where I was at that moment in time was the recognition
Mhm.
that the unconditional love was what I was not experiencing as a child. And then I got to directly experience that through my mother's spirit and also through the feeling of a one consciousness. Now, because I
Mm,
really wasn't
mm,
in the right set and setting to have that kind of unpacked with the kind of right integration coach, the right type of things that we all offer now at Casa Galactica,
mhm,
I wasn't really able to make that jump at that period of time. But yes, through feeling that
mhm.
experience of unconditional love, my understanding now is that that was the recognition that it's never left. It was just the illusion that it had left. And then it was me believing that
Exactly,
I was separate that then
exactly,
caused me to go down this spiraling of depression.
exactly.
So then that's been the journey of coming back home to that.
Yes.
And that's been really my life since then of how can I be more unconditional loving? How can I be a more loving husband? How can I be a more unconditionally loving in the work that I do? How can I be more unconditional in every aspect of my being?
Mm, right. You know what, Michael? I think that illusion of separation is what ails a great many souls on the planet. This feeling of not being enough, not being loved enough, good enough, something this or that enough. And I think one of the most insidious lies that we tell ourselves is that we are not loved.
Hmm.
And I I think what we're doing is we are looking to say that we're looking for love in all the wrong places is cliche, I know. But we're looking for validation of ourselves from outside of ourselves. Like it's completely reasonable, right? We expect that from our parents or particularly our mother, the mother that birthed us. You think that's unshakable, right? That's if that bond or that love isn't there, then there's nothing. But in fact, uh, the recognition of love of is within you, like within yourself, of self love. I mean, that we yes we want to expect it from our parents, but we it doesn't always that's not always where we see it, right? And when we don't see it there, we feel like we're devoid of this love, but in fact, it's the
Mhm.
essence of us. It's like you are that. And I think it requires that inward look, and however you get to look in, it could be the ayahuasca. It could be some sort of conscious awakening in your death experience. It could be, the alchemist journey of seeking. But which way that you get to that inward look, that is what I believe is what it's all about, is the recognition that you are the embodiment of this love which you seek outside of
Mhm.
you.
That's beautiful.
You are it.
Mm. Yeah, I think
Hmm.
just to segue from
So
that, I think if that's okay with you, Susan, and I know you asked a little earlier about what it
mhm.
is about ayahuasca. Just to follow up from what you've just
Mhm.
said, what ayahuasca and other plant medicines that we work with, but we work with ayahuasca as the main entheogenic or psychedelic plant medicine, however you would like to describe that. And we work with other non-psychoactive plant medicines as well, but specifically through the ayahuasca journeys, and then set in a trauma-informed setting with people and teachers who empower you to connect to the truth of who you are. That the plants are teachers to help you to connect to that truth, that you're not giving the power to the plants. The plants are a
Mm.
reflection back to you of your own infinite nature. Some people get lost on the way. Some people think that the plants have all the power. The plants are really here in our experience to help be a
Mm.
reflection of your true infinite nature. And when we frame it in that way, it's a
Mhm.
very powerful catalyst for transformation, which enables you to have the direct experience of unconditional love, the direct experience of your infinite nature, the direct experience of your truth that no one's told you on a podcast. It's not me talking to you about. It's not me saying this is what it is.
Mhm.
It's you having your own unique direct experience of that, which is perfect in so many ways that no one can tell you or teach you that. There's an experience that you have. Like, just for
Mhm.
instance, if you were fall in love for the first time, people could describe to you what it's like to
Mhm.
fall in love, but no one can really prepare you for what it's like to fall in love.
Mhm.
That has to be a direct experience. So, for you to understand
Mhm.
what true love is, you have to fall in love yourself. You don't have to read a novel about two
Mhm.
people falling in love. That'll get you halfway there. Maybe it'll be a signpost putting you in the right direction. But of course, as everyone knows from these
Mhm.
romantic
Mhm.
novels and TV movies, it's full of distortions, and that's not what true love looks like. And it's the same thing with spiritual teachings. Many spiritual teachings have then got all their own
Right, right.
distortions in there, and the truest spiritual teachings, as you well know, I imagine from the way that you're speaking here, Susan, is the one that gives you that empowerment to seek directly and experience it yourself. And now ayahuasca, in a way
Mhm.
that is possible with meditation, but I would imagine and say that you'd probably need 15 or 20 years of that meditation practice to be able to get to that level of experience. You may need 5, 10,
Mm.
15 years of psychotherapy experience to be able to move through the level of blockages which may be in your being. Ayahuasca can provide that level of insight and transformation in one ceremony. Now, here's the important part.
Mm.
When it's set in the right setting, that you're able to extract the learning and the teachings from that and then apply that meaning. And again, I'm going to say we've obviously applied meaning, which is, again,
Mhm.
you have to navigate that with care. And we teach people how to do this, not to imply negative meaning or no meaning that's a meaningless things. But if something resonates with you, if you have an experience that helps you recognize the truth of who you are, for instance, you have an ayahuasca experience, and then like I did, I recognized through the ayahuasca experience, I don't want to be an addict anymore. I took that meaning and applied that in a positive way that helped me go forward.
Mhm.
I could apply all sorts of
Mm.
other meanings. So when I say applying meaning, it's extracting the truth for you and then integrating that. And then integrating that into your life, which allows for conscious change and awakening for you to really live the life that you prefer. So, on one level, we've just talked about
Mhm.
this kind of access to those non dual states, the recognition of one consciousness, the recognition of our truth, and the healing of that through healing of our being through the direct awareness of our infinite one nature. That's where true healing awakening arises, when we recognize ourselves as the one infinite creator.
Mhm.
And in that setting, this is a very perfect and optimal environment in many ways for you to access and achieve those states, which can then transform your whole experience of reality, letting go of all those limiting beliefs, like I did, all those beliefs that no longer serve you. They just crumble like pulling the bottom out of a house of
Mhm.
cards.
Mhm.
The other beliefs, when you get to the core limiting beliefs, they can't stand up anymore. And that's why it's very, very catalytic, and it can happen very
Right, right.
fast. And just quickly on the other side of that, then we have the deep level of trauma healing, because we have those traumas which are stuck in our being, as we've already mentioned earlier in the show, that can be from other lifetime experiences. It can be things that we've incarnated to transform. It can be things that we've come here to experience, to see another point of view. It can be all of these many different ways, and other ways that I've not even mentioned or I'm aware of. We don't know. I don't know all the infinite intelligence. The infinite intelligence knows it. So you'll connect to that and work out what it is for you. But once we transform those things, we also then recognize that innate level of freedom which is here, where we're no longer kind of doing the homework of the past. All the kind of like like last
Mhm.
year's taxes, we were kind of like all built up, and we're like, we don't want to face them. God, I can't face doing those now. And then you have to face them
Mm.
all. And then anyone knows who's had a project that's been behind, or you've kind of got a deadline, and it's
Mhm.
tough when you have to go and face it, and it's uncomfortable, and it's long hours, and yeah, but then on the other side, you feel organized, you feel awake, and then you have all that energy to put into more passionate
Mm.
projects of things that
Mhm.
you truly desire. So it's the healing of the trauma, the healing of the blockages to love, the healing of the blockages to love within our being, and the recognition of the unconditional love that's always here infinitely now. And then the merging of those two from two opposite ends of the spectrum, allowing you to come home to the truth of who you are. And ayahuasca and the other plant medicines, Noya
Mm.
Rao and Blue Lotus, who we work with, metaphysical beings, they are here as beautiful metaphysical teachers to help you have the direct experience of that healing and awakening.
Mm. Can I ask you a question about the actual experience? Because I've looked into this. I have interest in it, and when I've listened to, uh, I would say, more traditional healers speak about ayahuasca, my understanding is that the ayahuasca was for the healer, like the plant healer, him or herself, not for me, like as the person seeking the experience. That the healer would take the ayahuasca and then like interpret for me. And then when I think about kind of the Western interpretation, it's no, me, the seeker takes it and not the healer. And so, have when you came into this practice? You're living in Peru, where a lot of this, I don't know if it originated on the planet, but at least that's where it seems to be now. Um, have you heard that? Like, where it's like we've shifted the experience of actually receiving the plant medicine. It wasn't that initially was or historically had been for the healer, him or herself
Mhm.
to take, in almost like as a proxy to help the seeker, or not. I wonder if I'm just
No, no,
misunderstanding
no. That's
something.
a good understanding, and I'll explain a little more with the from the background and place that I've studied and worked in the Amazon rainforest, studied with indigenous Shipibo healers and my teachers for quite a period of time. After now shifting our focus more into doing our own work, we don't work with indigenous healers at our own retreat center. We hold the ceremonies ourselves. And the foundation of the work that we've done in the Shipibo tradition, but it's evolved beyond that, where we talk about, and as you can kind of tell from this experience here, we're discussing non-dual aspects, trauma-informed care, trauma healing, and which really fit
Mhm.
into the Western paradigm, which is not necessarily so aligned with the traditional plant spirit healing paradigm. So again, it's not better or worse. It's just that
Mm.
it shifts because for the Western mind to integrate experiences, it is beneficial to have an understanding of how the Western psyche works, an understanding of trauma, an understanding of trauma informed care, and how to safely be able to navigate those experiences shamanically from the foundations of those traditions. But then, very much importantly for us, the empowerment of everything is here and now from the non dual Eastern Buddhist type teachings that is at the heart of everything we do. So going back to the traditional work and the traditional in the Shipibo tradition, you're absolutely correct that the curandero, which is a Spanish word for healer, which is synonymous with shaman, but we don't really use that word, and it's not really used here. It's curandero. So
Mhm.
the curandero would drink the ayahuasca brew, which is the ayahuasca vine and the chacruna plant, which then takes you into a deep spiritual metaphysical journey, of a DMT journey with the ayahuasca vine and the spirit and the knowledge of the plants there into the truth of who
What is
DMT.
DMT? What is a
DMT
DMT?
is
Yeah.
dimethyltryptamine, which is a naturally occurring substance within
Okay.
the pineal gland of our being, which is responsible for how we dream, when we have the visions, when we dream, those types of experiences. But the way that the ayahuasca
Mhm.
works, the ayahuasca is an MAO inhibitor, and
Mhm.
the MAO inhibitor prevents the DMT in the chacruna plant from being reabsorbed, which therefore then makes the DMT orally active, which then allows us to go on to a 3 to 6 hour DMT journey in that sense. But it's not a DMT journey in the sense that you may hear of people smoking DMT. It's very much different in the way that the brew is prepared, with the prayers which are put into it and the intelligence of the plant doctors which are within the ayahuasca medicine itself. So it goes into this world. And what does that look like? It can mean the veil of illusion dissolves. So spirit is able to be communicated with
Mhm.
much more easily. And again, we can do all these things without ayahuasca. You're able to see different things about the patients within the ceremony. So the curandero would then drink the ayahuasca. The patients would be in the maloka, which is the ceremony space, and then he or she would then
Mhm.
sing different icaros, which would then open the ceremony, call in the different spirits of the plant doctors, because the plants are doctors. The plant doctors would then go to each patient, and then they would start doing healing work and then reveal different illnesses, diagnoses to the curandero, who then after the ceremony would then also make different plant concoctions, which is hence the non-psychoactive plant medicines which we provide in our retreats, which then
Mhm.
are there to help heal the mind,
Mhm.
body, and spirit. Now, that is true. And in the sense of the online trauma healing works, which I do sing healing icaros and transmissions. I don't need to drink ayahuasca to do that because I'm a channel and I've learned and practiced how to do that. I don't need to ingest that. But in my trauma healing sessions, I will take people through these metaphysical online multidimensional healing ceremonies where people receive healing in that way whilst I'm guiding them through trauma informed meditations to help access deep core wounds. But they receive the healing of spirit without drinking or ingesting any ayahuasca. So there's the historic component, and
Mhm.
then there's how that actually works for me here today. Now, the third point of what I want to mention is the benefit then of us as Westerners or anyone else in fact, who wants to drink ayahuasca, especially so, when we then frame this in the context of non-duality, of that your consciousness is the truth, is you're your own healer, you're empowered to recognize that unconditional love as your own true being, especially when we frame it in that setting, which is not always the case, but this is very much the heart of what we do. In our experience, that enables people and helps people to have very, very transformative experiences through releasing blocks and limiting beliefs of their own being, and to recognize the truth of who you are. Now, there's a whole set of
Mhm.
symptoms, I would say, of drinking ayahuasca, which is known as purging. So once you've drank the ayahuasca brew,
Mhm.
after about 15 to 30 minutes, you'll find yourself going into the altered state where this veil of illusion will begin to dissolve, when you'll be able to feel more intensely the emotions in your body, feel the blocks, also visit other lifetimes perhaps, or even repressed memories. to be able to heal, to reframe, to see things from different perspectives. And then also then to have those non-dual type experiences of connecting with spirit and the infinite creator. But as we go through that experience, the ayahuasca can work through the body as the medicine goes through the body and finds those blockages, and then it can cause us to purge. Now, the purge can be anything from
Mhm.
vomiting or diarrhea, which is the kind of more physical levels of purging. But then there's also crying. There's also shakes, or the body might start shaking as that somatically the energy is released from the body. Yawning is a big one. You can kind of get
Mm.
hot or cold. And all this is the medicine helping remove those blockages. Now, to anyone who has
Mm.
experienced crying, I'm going to use that analogy here because most of us have cried at some point, probably a lot over the last couple of years, if
Mhm.
everyone's been having a similar experience. But anyone who's had that big, really, really big cry, not just the kind of like a few tears, when it's just been like wailing,
Mhm.
or a really
A
good
good
cry,
cry, a
and
really
it's
good
so
cry.
terrible, kind of like when it's
Mhm.
really in that depths of that sadness, feeling it all, and then you cry and then you release it, and then it's like, oh, I feel free.
Mhm.
I feel that freedom. So that's a
Mhm. Mhm.
description of a purge, is when that discomfort, that blockage, that sadness, that loneliness, those limiting beliefs leave our being. Then they leave and create space for the truth of who we are, which, as we've already decided and discussed here today, is already unconditionally loving, is already free, is already infinite. It allows us to take the blinkers off. It allows us to clean the windscreen, the lens of our lives, and recognize the truth of who we are once we've cleaned the cloud of that trauma. So it's very, very, very powerful.
Mm.
And in those senses, ayahuasca ceremonies can be a little bit uncomfortable from time to time. They can be difficult and they can be challenging.
Mhm.
And this is why we have such a integrative and transformative program with other healing modalities, one-on-one sessions, preparation, integration, trauma-informed care, safety, integrity, and all of these other things that you can find on our website at casagalactica.com. So I won't go into all those things now. But once you have that experience in that safe setting in trauma-informed care, it can really transform your life. It what might take decades doing something else. If I'd not drank ayahuasca, I would say it
Mhm.
would have took
Mhm.
me a lot longer, if at all, for me to find myself on this path now at 34 years old.
Mhm.
Mm.
Understood, understood. Well, Michael, this has been a beautiful conversation, very enlightening. I've learned a great deal. If someone wants to learn more about ayahuasca, what should they do to learn more about you, or how does your operation work?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Susan, for having me on the show. Absolute pleasure. If anyone of you valued listeners want to check out our work, you can visit casagalactica.com, which I believe will be in the show notes. And you can firstly just check
Mhm.
out our website because it's very comprehensive. We put a lot of love and care into that, that we do our best to explain comprehensively about our 10-day ayahuasca healing and evolution retreats. So if you're interested and you check out the website and you want to know more, you can go to the bottom of the web page and you can find the free consultation button, and you can book a 30-minute Zoom call with either my wife, Jamie, or I, and we'll talk about your own personal set of circumstances and situation. And we'll talk more about any fears that are coming up, more in depth about your own situation. Then, when you go through the whole process with us, you will go through, once you've booked your deposit and paid your deposit down in the retreat, you'll have a full health and wellness screening questionnaire. You'll have a one-on-one preparation session with us where we go through your health history, your trauma history, any medications or contraindicated conditions to make sure that you're going to be completely safe coming to work with us. And then we have a whole 10-day healing and evolution program with 4 ayahuasca ceremonies and alternative healing modalities and one-on-one care. And we do this in with just groups of just 4 people. So we do very, very intimate, very, very small one-on-one
Mm.
care and attention, which we believe is really, really powerful for people who want to really change their life and transform. And then there's a whole integration program where
Mm.
we keep integrating with you. We have monthly integration circles that are ongoing, which are free for you to attend. Plus, we have a whole program of one-on-one care that is part of the program as well. So we really take you through that whole process, try to leave no stone unturned, and just really invite you to connect with us. And also subscribe to our newsletter because you'll get a whole bunch of free gifts in your inbox that will help you start activating your intuition, empower your healing, and embody your truth straight away. So you can just visit our website. All of that's there. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone.
I want to thank you for taking this inner journey with us today. And whether you are coming or going, looking inside or out, remember to be conscious. If you love this episode and if today's message resonated with you, please subscribe, rate, and review the Be Conscious podcast. I want to know what inspired you and what conscious topics you'd like to hear more about. And if you want, you can share those thoughts and questions with me at info@susannicholas.org.
Thanks for listening to the Be Conscious podcast with author, TEDx international speaker, and conscious coach, Dr. Susan Nicholas. Be sure to connect with her to stay up to date with her latest news and works. Learn more about her conscious speaking platform at susannicholas.org/speaking. Stay tuned for the next thought-provoking episode. And whether you are coming or going, looking inside or out, remember to be conscious.